Okay, everybody get to a place where you can pay attention to the screen. Madeline, can you turn off the lights for me real quick? All right, so with surrealism, we talked about some criteria the other day as far as what the image needs to be. First of all, what formal aspects are we looking for? Did we see in common? What's that little thing? You guys see that? So what sort of formal criteria did we see in the various artists that we were looking at? Well, let's step back for a second. Let's say subject. In your subject matter, there needs to be person or persons. There can be animal or plant. Yes. So there must be person or persons. There can be animal or plant. What else did we see in common with all of the various artists that we were looking at? Okay, so a landscape of some sort, and that landscape could be architectural or natural. All right. So a good way of shorthanding that would be place. Okay. What else? Yeah. So one thing that we see in common with all of these artists are some kind of objects. Like in the case of Dorothea Tanning, there's the ribbon. Same with good old Frida Kahlo. There's that kind of repeated rhythm of a ribbon type of quality. Oh, that was alliteration. Repeated rhythm of the repeated rhythm of the ribbon. Obviously, when you get into like landscapes, you could be looking at objects like leaves or pine cones. I'm just being kind of random, which is what surrealists do. So it could be natural or man-made, right? So in the case of this image, you know, the ladder, books, little baubles and trinkets, this weird treble clef musical instrument looking thing, the rocking horse, the chair, this orb thing that she's carrying. Now, obviously, a lot of this is going to be related to your dream somehow, or dreams if you're collaging multiple dreams. That said, some of this stuff could be integrated into an actual dream. Like if your memory is not kind of fuzzy, or if you want to add something to what you're including as far as imagery is concerned, you could insert things that weren't actually in your dream. And I would think that that would fit in with the kind of intuitional, and a favorite word of the Dadaist and the Surrealist, Dada is another movement that took place simultaneous with Surrealism, is absurdity, right? That's something you often hear associated with both of those movements. So subject or imagery, persons, animals, or plants. I would say that it must have at least one human. The rest could be animals, or not. You know, here it's plant, not animal. Mythical animal. Plant dress. Fancy. Kind of Rococo looking a little bit, yes? These are some examples of student works. So this weird floating broken wine bottle pouring down and up simultaneously. And then there's like this mink stole, and the little minks are like alive instead of dead, like they should be. Yes. This one? Yeah. You could. You could. I mean, if you look back at the examples that we looked at, there are some that have nondescript backgrounds. But it would be nice to have some indication of place. So other student examples, I think, are a little bit better with including at least some sort of environment, right? So the stage, for instance, is a very powerfully evocative symbol of life, right? So all the world's a stage. I think that's Shakespeare, right? And then, you know, this hand pulling back the curtain, and then this mirror / painting with snakes, Medusa. So this has got everything that it has listed here. This one's kind of interesting and fun. So is she underwater or out in the sky? Is that a reflection, or is the sky extending underwater? This interesting trap door, that's another loaded object or reference to place, right? Mystery, a portal from one world to another world, doors. You know, if we look back at Dorothea Tanning, you know, doors as portals from one world to another is a big stylistic symbol or iconography. That's what we're talking about, iconography. Look at how the goldfish are arranged. See how she's created a directional structure in figure 8 as a way of moving our eye from top to bottom. I like this one's kind of interesting. So he's got the cowboy outfit. So fashion, I mean, we've seen in all of the representatives of surrealism proper that clothing is a big emblem of iconography. And we kind of talked about that with the Rococo project as well, right? Then you've got Stonehenge, which is a
kind of metaphysical environment, right? It was a calendar or a reference for astrology slash astronomy, and had to do with Druidic, animistic slash paganistic worship practices. And then he's lassoing the cloud. Look at how he's distorted the fleet. That kind of extreme foreshortening. So I think that's another good example. Yes? Okay.
So what are some formal requirements that we're seeing as far as what's going on here? There we go. The historic precedents of surrealists from the era. What are some formal requirements stylistically? Not content. Naturalistic. More or less, right? So basic accuracy in proportion and perspective, yes. But as we saw in the last example of the student work, there was some extreme foreshortening, right? So we could say can distort proportions or perspective for effect. We'll call it affect because it's more of an emotional than simply a technique. What about lighting? One last note on the perspective. We talked about with Kylo how the floor kind of feels like it's tipping up at us. Some invented perspectives, like I'm not so sure this is an accurate perspective. We're seeing a lot of this table surface, but essentially so. This floor is definitely kind of warped and tilting up. Does everybody see that? So some distortions in perspective or proportions to give it that otherworldly feel. What about lighting? Pretty naturalistic? I don't know. Like it's either like really moody atmospheric lighting like these, or in the case of Kyla, it's pretty flat. Yes. And I think the first example, Helen Lundberg, is fairly flat as well. So either a moody atmospheric or flat quality. Okay. I would say space. Yes. I mean, there's space there. But this feels flat. There's a little bit of atmospheric perspective in the background. but the foreground is almost as flat as what's going on in the background. So I think in either case, it's kind of a playfulness, kind of an awareness of the rules, but a kind of bending of the rules. Does that make sense to everybody? And then color. Yeah, I would say color is subdued. More or less. I'm thinking about, Frida Kahlo's palette is pretty rich. Yes. Not bright, but rich, depending. Whereas this is fairly muted, kind of soft, a little pastel-y kind of, but darker values. Pretty rich color. Is that a pretty accurate statement? You see me use AI there real quick? Such a awful, awful person. All right. But, in any case, we're thinking about creating an evocative quality by doing what dreams do, which is like fool us into thinking this is real. But then there are things that are unsettling, that are just off center of what we would expect to see in reality. Does that make sense to everybody? I thought, I showed you a lot of surrealists. Another great one, we'll look at some male surrealists. We looked at all female surrealists the other day. This is Rene Magritte. Let's see if I can do large. Anybody familiar with him? This is probably his most famous. It's a great image for talking about Plato's philosophy and the reality of images and of our perception. Do you see something qualitatively similar with Magritte's work and the other surrealists we've looked at? I mean, would his images fit with our list? Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Like painting an interior perspective of an architectural space like a bedroom, but then is it wallpaper or are we seeing through the walls? That's the question that we start to ask ourselves. Haha. Humor, I think, is also a big thing in surrealism, right? So that would go back to, or I guess it would go to content, right? Not creams, dreams, subconscious, humor, absurdity. Maybe even fear. Questioning reality, playing with reality. Trying to think of his most famous, oh, this one. Yeah. Reminds me of a song. That's what he was trying to express. Very interesting work. That's really interesting. I was using the negative space there. Of course, we all know this guy. Don't even have to type in his first name. By the way, if you're ever down in Clearwater, Florida, great Salvador Dali museum down. All Salvador Dali. Wonderful, wonderful thing. There's his most famous painting. You know, I always ask when I teach art appreciation, what is more realistic, this or a Picasso painting? And you'd be surprised with how many people say the Picasso painting looks more realistic than that. Because they can recognize imagery. Whereas here, you're not sure what you're looking at, especially with where my finger is. But that's a self-portrait of Salvador Dali melting like the clocks. To me, this is, even though the subject matter is not realistic, it looks very realistic, highly naturalistic. That's what Emily was referring to in the first statement, right? There's a naturalistic quality to all of this stuff. This is an interesting photograph of Dali. So it's a photograph kind of done. I don't know how they did it. It's really interesting how dreamlike it is. One more artist, probably my favorite, or one of my favorite, is Giorgio de Chirico. Anybody ever heard of him? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah. I really love his palette. I think that's what I like about him most. Lots of kind of greenish blues and grays. But I love his use of perspective. It reminds me a little bit of the early Renaissance artist Giotto, who always had interesting, weird kind of perspectives. Of course, with Giotto, linear perspective had not been invented yet. So he was trying to figure it out. This is, of course, true linear perspective, but it still has this kind of strangeness about it. And I really think that the strangeness owes a lot to what I would describe as emptiness. Like there's a lot of emptiness in his paintings. So scale is really important. And then the color palette as well. Lots of references to ancient Rome, as well as contemporary Italy in his day. Classical statues and the like. All right, so if we look at and I don't want to belabor this because I want to get to the demonstration so we can get started. The assignment over the weekend was, oh, I didn't retitle it. I'm sorry. Thank you for ignoring me and posting anyway. Was to create a research file of images that you could use. Gosh, they look like pears to me. So all of a sudden, like I want to draw a goat with a pear body or something like that. I don't know what. Tell us your dream, Lisa. You're in a desert with sheep. Lamps, like old-fashioned lamps. Green library lamps. So the brass base with the green color. Okay. All right. Sounds interesting. So light is what? Knowledge, especially a library lamp, right? So awareness, truth, knowledge, understanding, being able to see things properly. Does that make sense? And then what does a lamb represent?
Or are they lambs or goats? Sheep or goats? Sheep. So what does sheep represent? When I say you're acting like a sheep, what does that mean? Cowardice, meekness, following a leader, right? Not thinking for yourself. So all of a sudden you have this interesting like juxtaposition between the truth and what other people are telling you reality is all about. And what I'm assuming you're leading the sheep in your dream, yes? Or are you one of the sheep? One of the sheep. Okay. So typically we would expect you to be the shepherd, right? And typically when we think of sheep, we automatically think of the shepherd, right? Which would be a leader. Be a good sheep shepherd or a bad shepherd, depending. You're in the desert. What's that symbolize? Isolation, lack, starvation, hunger, aimless wandering, wilderness, lostness. Does that make sense? So you just have to kind of think it through as you're creating. And then as you're thinking, there's those wonderful lamps. Oh, what's that about? Oh, okay. Interesting. So is the desert going to have books? No. So you're just going to be sitting in the desert in this chair. Are you going to have a book in a coffee cup spilled like that? Kind of like the empty coffee. Now, I'm not saying you have to like it, but all of a sudden I get excited. I start seeing the relationship between the other images that we have talked about, right? Like an empty coffee cup. You're in the desert. You're thirsty. Are you following me? Because of course you're awake and you're thinking and you're trying to balance your awareness of reality, which is where we are right now. Maybe, I don't know, we could be dreaming. What you remember, your memory, right, of the dream. And of course, the awareness that I'm talking about is awareness of the formal and conceptual requirements of the project, right? But also of the surrealist tactic, which is to be a purveyor of strong emotion, be it positive or negative. You know, affect, not effect, affect. Right? So humor, absurdity, weirdness, quirkiness, you name it, edgy qualities. Does that follow? Questions? Yes, Lars. So I want to say one thing about what Lars just did and what I just did. Is Lars or I Isa? No, but we're playing the game. Does that make sense? And that's what I want you to do. Because if I or Lars infects you with our subconscious associations, then it's not Isa anymore. It's Lars and or Professor Wilson. Does that make sense? So great suggestion. Too bad it's not your project or mine. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm just going to pick one more person at random. All right, Alexis. talk to us about your dream and speak loud so my friend online can hear you.
I kind of combined.
Okay. Few dreams. Is it the teeth falling out dream?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I have that often. How many other people have had the teeth falling out dream? You've never had that one? Oh my gosh. It's the worst. All right. What's this? Okay, that's interesting. Let's peel that apart. Well, let's let Alexis peel that apart. What does a forest represent in your mind? Danger? Is there danger out there? You can't see. At least in the desert, you can see all around you. All right. And then fruit. What does the fruit represent? Well, at a baseline level, fruit is about sustenance, right? It's about eating. I think in our context, we think of it as healthy, or I guess we used to. Now it's like, there's too much sugar in it, you gotta be blah, blah, blah. Repeating what the doctor said. Just eat vegetables. Now, another context, at least from a Judeo-Christian point of view, would be the tree of the knowledge, or the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So you could think of fruit in those terms, if that's in your background. So again, we have knowledge, right? It's an archetypal symbol. It's just like light is an archetypal symbol for knowledge. Fruit, another association that I have with fruit is works. Like what we do is our fruit, right? We want to bear good fruit in our lives. I don't grow bananas. I am bananas. Oh, bananas, craziness, right? Are you seeing what I'm doing here? Like it's called free association. So thinking in those terms as you're composing can help to keep you in that river of surrealism. Animals. What are animals? What kind of animals? I saw a snake. What other kind?
A swan.
A swan. So owls, wisdom, right? Swans, innocence, maybe beauty. I think of the ugly duckling. Whenever I think of swans. For some reason, swans and that butterfly like fall into a similar category for me because of the ugly duckling story, right? Caterpillar, butterfly, ugly duckling, the swan, snakes. Now we're back to the tree of the knowledge, or the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Teeth. What is falling? Oh, fruits, teeth. We need teeth to eat fruit. Or teeth fall out. Can't eat. I also think the dream about teeth is about losing control. And it's about your teeth are largely connected with your appearance. I think the teeth thing is kind of like the naked thing. As far as the dream symbol. Yes.
It's got big dreams with your teeth falling out. It's linked it to extreme stress that is outside.
It's a loss of control. Everybody following this? All right, so let's
Talk about step one. So whether you want to do, thumbnails or not, I'll leave it up to you. I'm not requiring it as a part of the creative process. And mostly because, oh no. Mostly because of why? Why do you think I'm not including it? Yeah, they didn't do a lot of mediation ahead of actually creating the painting. I'm sure some of them did. I don't want to say something that isn't true. So I don't want to make a sweeping statement like they never did shape studies. Let's see. History. Oh man, are you serious? Hold on a second. But I think that, thinking about being as improvisational as you possibly can in as many ways as you possibly can, is going to be a valuable tool in keeping it kind of more geared to a surrealist modality or working method. Now, I want to say something. This is not this project. It's a different project, but it's using the same technique that I want to use. So step one, well, let me step back a second. The thing you have to keep in mind as you're doing this is that you got to fit everything in there. So you can't be totally random. You need to be somewhat calculated in the way that you're arriving at the image. I would make one more compositional note. Symmetry is a really good way of creating an otherworldly feel. Now, not all the images that we looked at were symmetrical, but that is another way of creating an artificiality, because we very rarely see symmetry. So I'm just trying to get you to think about how the composition is going to need space. So think about the environment first, and then where the objects go in the environment. Does that make sense to everybody? Like, think about how you're structuring the landscape or the interior first, and then go into the idea about object placement within that ground. Now, back to the demonstration. So what I want is something that looks like this in its degree of finish and in its color palette and its material. So if you looked at this, you would say, well, that looks like a pretty close to finished drawing, right? A black and white drawing. The only thing I'm lacking is the rest of the stripes on my train conductor overalls. But as you know, I have trouble finishing demonstrations. But you can see there's a full range of value there. All I have used is the white color pencil, okay? So I've basically done in painting or in drawing what is known in painting as an imprimatura, an underpainting, okay? And what we'll do in the next phase is colorize. So the nice thing about working in this method is that you get value out of the way first, and then all you have to do is think about color. You don't have to think about value. So you'll basically colorize this with transparent veils of the colors once this face is completed. So how important is this face? Very important. You need to have white, all of the grays, all the way to black. Now you've already got black here for the most part. There will be a point in time where we have to accent this with actual black colored pencil, because is this truly black? No, it's like a really dark gray. So, but I want you to restrain yourself to the white colored pencil for the majority of step one. Does that make sense? Or you can catch me outside. Right? So basically, I start off, I'm working from this photograph. Boy, I was skinny. And I just do a line drawing, constructive line drawing, getting everything where it needed to be. And then I start gesturing in tone. Now, let me ask a question. What direction is the light coming? The right, right? And it's moving towards the left. So my left side of the image is in shadow and the right side is in light. Am I going in with a pure white from the very beginning? No, I'm using low pressure, and this is hard to rack your brain with. If I want dark grays and I'm using a white pencil, I have to use low pressure. Does that make sense? So you have to restrain yourself in this kind of primary phase where you're getting the direction of light. Little bit more of secondary light coming in here, meaning I'm pushing the values a little bit more. And then I start pushing it a little bit lighter, but I'm still not completely white yet. Does that make sense? Like I'm modulating it in this kind of secondary phase as I move into more detail and try to get better proportion, but I'm still not pushing all the way down. And why am I not pushing all the way down? Yeah, because the actual whitest white is going to be very minute in its quantity, right? Am I working everywhere at once? Am I finishing anything? No, I'm keeping the page open. Working in the figure and the ground. Pushing the values a little bit. And then you know what happened? I took a break and forgot to start recording again. So I took a picture of myself really angry. And I started over. So just to show you a similar process. So has everybody kind of got the idea? And then I came back and I really started pushing the values. So you can see, like now I'm starting to get some pure whites in the highlights and things like that, getting into texture. And so on. So that's about where I want you to be by the time. Then it's really quick to colorize if you have a proper premature or underdrawn. If you don't do this step right, it's going to be a real struggle. Any questions? No? Andrew, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think I have any questions.
So really, guys, this is like full circle almost. Like we're back to the first drawing. In a way. Just smaller and with different medium and different subject matter. Yeah, Eric.
Okay, so we have to fully render it in white.
That's correct.
So not like school. Cover.
like what I have in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, this is different project.
Okay.
That's just me playing. I didn't even want them to do that in this, particular exercise. So this is from my life drawing class. They had to do a self-portrait, and I made them wear funny hats. So the project is called Mini Hats. It's a fun project, but yes, Sydney.
So you would want us to use that pure right for highlights still at certain points, even though we're going over it in color.
Yeah, at the very end.
Okay.
At the very end of this page, do I have highlights? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Some, yes. No, I don't?
You do.
Yes. So yes,
Okay.
that's the answer to that question. Does that make sense? So pretend like you're doing this and you're not going to be using color. And finish. By Monday. Does that make sense? Now you know why we're doing this on the smaller ones. Because it'll go more. On the smaller ones. All right? Okay, so start. You should.
Oh,
Any
I
other
guess I,
questions? Yes, yeah.
sorry, I was gonna ask what size is this
Well, for
drawing gonna
you,
be?
it's 9 by 12,
Oh, okay.
9 inches by 12 inches, not 9 feet by 12 feet. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
And a black surface.
All right, I'll set it up like I did the Vanitas,
needles.
just like smaller.
Yep.
I am assuming you did. Okay.
But yeah, I did look on the week, over the weekend before I knew the process, it doesn't really require it. Because I was like, it makes sense to do a few steps. I was trying to sketch down my dream more than like actually. Spring from it, so I didn't forget. It like, but my composition. My group is very kind of detailed. And these are pretty minimalistic. So, in their composition, right? I guess they probably don't have to be, but
No, they don't have to be.
that's everywhere. Are you gonna work alongside us with this project, or are you gonna do something slightly different?
I don't know. Yes. So let me answer the question. For reading the examples.
I think mine. It was like, you know, when the dies and the home gets covered in sheets. Your phone is like the furniture.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a.
Two witches.
Very.
Like, you know how intricate doors are?
Yeah.
They were wearing that. Like,
That-
like.
Would.
If you need a good door reference, I have a.
I have a roasted strap. Like entire table. Yeah, it's in my bag right now. No, it's in my car. Where's your door?
The first place that I would.
Anyway, where's your door?
Like,
And
killed me. Dark bath.
and then at your house, it was not my house. So it was, okay. And then I had to lay there
So
while,
they need to use.
we're just still at whoever's house it was. Well,
Because you want it to be from contracts.
what did it look like in the turnout film where it was in
I'm gonna make a recommendation.
what direct, like what side was it
So-
you're looking at, like the witches?
Pretend like you're doing this entire mission. That makes sense.
Let's say I'm in like a foyer.
We're
No.
not.
It was
Yeah, is it from your perspective?
It was,
Okay,
so I was thinking about
One of those things, rent anything.
over you.
it being like on,
They on.
like,
I sometimes have a hard time
I don't
understanding.
feel how, I don't,
Or grab,
or I'm not coming up with anything on how I can make that
how do they
realistic.
color on.
I mean, I guess maybe it inherently is, but
So for instance.
in my brain, it's just like, oh, I'm drawing
When I'm
this.
doing a red shape,
Yeah.
color do I use? Red. Green. Follow what I mean, like. It's hard to think of both of those things. Much easier would be to do a gray scale. It's not something to worry about.
So weird though.
And do it really well. And then go over it
Yeah.
very.
Okay.
No, I thought you were just really, really cool.
No, I don't know how to apply it.
That one is.
Draw.
When you think about
It will-
like something, well, I don't know, obviously it's something effective, like. Obviously, would it be an advantage if the viewers to do, or would it be? Sound. Right, I mean, one thing would be just like close the door box, you know, like, you know, that would. Stood out to you. Pick up this one, start doing shapes. Make sure. Love shapes. You gotta love shapes. Tired shapes.
What are you talking about? Share screen. Okay. All right. Let me pull up the screen so I can see. Okay. So while I was down in Florida, we went to this restaurant. Can't remember the name of it, but they had all these wonderful fish on the wall, you know, mounted fish. Like this one, which is a dolphin fish. And then they also had a whole wall of grouper. And then I love this fish. Let's see. Where is he? Which I believe is a flounder. which is a really weird fish because both of the eyes are on the same side of the head, which is really weird, strange. So come on over here. Can you bring your thing of pencils over? So, like you can see that I've already done a dolphin fish right there. And I've got my little face jug on this little piece of driftwood or part of a planet or moon. I don't know. I'm just thinking randomly. And then you can see here that I've got like more contrast in these figures, right? Lighter lights and darker darks versus back here, I've kind of subdued the contrast a little bit to push it towards the background, right? Can you do this? I'm about to run out of batteries as well. So I think I'm gonna do the flounder fish coming like from behind this guy. So I start off, I put a line there as a center line for the fish, as well as a kind of way of pointing from the eye up to this figure. So just kind of like a directional shape. I'm going to put a lot of fish, like smaller fish, bigger fish, fish coming in and just kind of swimming around this guy. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wish maybe one of the fish was overlapping it, but I can erase. I can still modify. So I'm coming in here, and I'm really careful not to outline the figure, because if I outline the figure in white, that's the same thing as like outlining the figure in black. You trap yourself when it comes to the figure-ground relationship, because whenever you put stuff behind it, you have to put stuff behind it that is either as light as that in order to get rid of that white outline, or as dark as that if it's a dark outline. So if you work tonally, you're going to be in better shape. So I'm noticing that there's like a little bit of a fin at the bottom, and then another fin at the top. And then we've got his little head in here. And just for demonstration's sake, I'll go ahead and, since I drew some water on top in here, I'll just go ahead and erase it just to show you that you can indeed erase it. And that's good, because now these waves kind of go behind the figure. Not crazy about that, but whatever. Now I'm going to kind of just maybe work with a little bit of clarification. You know, this is the top fin, right? But notice I'm not going really light with it. Now down here on this bottom fin, at least in the lighting that was in the restaurant, which I'm just going to use just for the sake of using it, and that ends about right here. It does get lighter at the bottom, so I'm going to go a little bit brighter. Am I going all the way white, Eric? No. And as it goes behind this figure, what am I going to do? Ease off the gas a little bit so that it actually disappears behind that figure. And then it seems like up in here is where the hottest spot is. So I'm going to be a little bit more pressure there. But again, as it goes behind this figure, I'm going to do what Lars told me to do, which is kind of ease off the gas. And you can see that I can draw all day long over that handle and not have any problem with that handle disappearing, right? Because I'm using a lighter pressure. And then obviously as we go down here, as we meet that fin, it gets pretty black. So I'm going to be really light with the pressure, if anything, so that I have that separation between the body. Obviously I'm flipping this fish around in my head. So The eye is about right there. And then he's got that pouty little lip. Look at him. He's so sad. He's pouty. And that's because he has two eyes on the same side of his body. Huh? Now there's a little bit of a lighter area here around the gills. So I'll delineate that with a tone. And then there's that line. So I'll go a little bit lighter here so that it leaves a line in between. If I don't like the shape of it, I can always come back and, erase it out. Everybody following me on this so far? Where's his little fin? His little fin's about here.
Yeah.
And the fin seems lighter, so I'm going to go a little bit more pressure. And then less pressure here. And then underneath the fin, it's light. So see, if I draw light on the other side, what does that leave me underneath the fin? The dark. And then I can kind of see kind of like a subtle modulation of lighter values in there. Can you see the fish starting to take on form? I'm actually doing this more precisely than I would like to. And then there's a really hot light in here. So I'm going to push a little bit harder. And maybe a little bit lighter back here, but I'm going to be more kind of tertiary. As far as like how I'm drawing, how's it looking? Still good?
Mhm.
Okay. What would you notice about my technique?
Using the side of the pencil, not the tip.
Right. I mean, I have drawn very little by way of outline, right? So it's a very tonal approach. And the other thing that I would say is that I'm going very slowly from shadow to light. Does that make sense to everybody? That pencil sharpener is not working for me. So I'm going to make a mess. All right. So now I can get a little bit more aggressive. So it's really hot in here. So I'm going to press really hard. And it's pretty hot in here as well. You understand what I mean when I say hot. Strong lighting. There's some little glints in here. He's so sad. Now, am I concerned with texture? No, not so much. I could, if I wanted to, maybe create kind of a texture with hatching like that. That looks pretty good for scales. Now, I'm also, at the same time I'm drawing right with the individual figure, I'm also drawing wrong. In what way am I drawing wrong?
You're not working the whole page.
Yeah, I'm concentrated on the one figure. It does get lighter back in there. So do as I say, not as I do. And then maybe some stuff in here. Oh, I should do that here too. So I heard it. Is it still?
It's saying low battery.
So
10%.
click close. Yeah. So, working from dark to light and just increasing my pressure as I move into the lighter areas. Soften some of this stuff. All right. Now, once I've done that type of thing everywhere, I really don't like this. I put that wave in the wrong place for that fish to be. It was conflicting with the body of the fish. Now, once you've got all the white everywhere and a full tonal range, obviously, so skip forward, there's a bunch of fish. Maybe I put a sunset back there or something like that. Who knows? Maybe more water down in this place. Maybe a chicken wing or something. I don't know. Something weird. I like to come back
Do we do this before next class with the block?
Yes. So what am I adding? And what does that do?
Accentuating the darks.
Yeah, it's giving little accents of the darks. Am I covering over the entirety of all my black with this? No, I'm just creating little emphasizing darks. And can you see how it increases the dimensionality and how it does differ with the black of the page? Does that make sense to everybody? So I was keeping that secret from you because I really don't want you to do it until you've got the whole page covered in this grayscale, right? Because that way you're preserving and I guess kind of protecting yourself against going too dark with the black pencil in too much quantity. Okay? Now, Madeline, you're doing a great job in your image, was expressing a lot of trepidation and fear about what comes next. And that's why I'm like, don't worry about that. Don't think about that. Don't do anything with that. Just think about this as your Vanitas project. Like literally think about it like that. But I do want to show you quickly how it will work. So do as I say, not as I do. Don't do this over the weekend. Be clear? If I see any color in any of your drawings between now and Monday, you fail the whole course. Okay? All right. But I do want to show you. So if I come over here, and I haze over the whole body of that fish with a yellow, what do you notice? Say what? It becomes yellow, but it keeps the values. The values are still there. Does that make sense? So I can come up in here and go over the area in here. Does that look like a pure blue? Well, it does everywhere it's over white, but where it's over the black, it darkens the blue a little bit. It dulls it down a little bit. And again, just like my initial layers of the white, think you can hear it. Look at that. The blue over the yellow gets what? A green color. Right. It's green. And all I'm thinking about is just a relatively low pressure transparency over it, so that the white and the dark can show through. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm not thinking about pressure in terms of how we normally think of pressure, which is, pressure produces darker darks, or pressure produces lighter lights in the case of the white chalk. So it's like easy peasy. All of a sudden, we've got that fish colorized. Does that make sense? Now, like, let's say that I wanted a yellow sunset behind here. If I do this, that yellow is a lot duller than the yellow there. Does that make sense? Even if I push relatively hard, it's still duller than what we have over there. Does that follow? So if instead I start with that white first, and I'm not saying that that's like illegal. I'm just saying that if you want a brilliant yellow at the horizon, like I do, or a vibrant yellow, then I got to put down white first. Does this help to like kind of visualize where we're going over the weekend? But what's going to happen if you put color in this?
We fail the whole course.
Fail the whole class, Ella. So don't do it. I know. Well, it's tempting because it looks so good. Doesn't that look nice? Like, it's like candy. And Issa missed the entire demonstration.
Sebastian just gave me some Catholic stickers. Sounds better.
Okay. As important as saints are, in this particular moment, this is fairly important. So, what does Issa not do? Do not use color. This is me demonstrating what the color will look like when we lay the color over the grayscale. Do you see how it looks? Good? Yes? Okay.
Oh, and the black.
And the black, yeah. So once you've got your grayscale done, thank you, Emily is my official teaching assistant, you may want to come back and use dark to push or accent the dark values that you've already done. Those teeth need to be brightened up. So I'm going to push really hard. On one side. Now, just like all the other mediums that we've used this semester, yeah, look at how the black really makes that mouth look like it's deep. Does that make sense? But only do that after you've got the full range of value with the page as the black. Then go back and accent with the black marker. Just like all the mediums that we've used, what do you need to avoid? Too many layers. Does that make sense? That's another reason to do it this way, because it's like 2 layers. Does that make sense? And I realize color pencils can be used in a lot of different ways. They have blending things and blah, 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 blah. But you don't need them. You don't really need them if you work in this indirect fashion. Okay? Everybody clear?
Yes, sir.
It's time to go. Andrew, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just concerned that my image that I was working on wasn't going to be weird enough.
Do you want to show me what you got?
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, well, if you can give me a minute, I'm gonna hop back on my computer because my
Okay.
phone's.
All right.